So today I'm going to be talking to Guy Cresswell. Hello, how are you?
Hello there, Vic. How you doing?
I must say you're looking very well, but
Thank you.
It probably will come to light of why you're looking so well.
Well, I don't know about you. COVID was an opportunity to grow out the hair.
Yes,
absolutely. Exactly. And hair are our aerials. They're our connection to the universe, as we well know, Vic. That's why musicians have long hair. And yeah, so I'm looking a bit, I don't know, 1970s, to be quite frank with you.
So look, standard, traditional first question, which is, what do you do?
What do I do? I'm very lucky. I get to wake up every day and just play music. And I use the word play as in the child play, to play music. And I still get the same joy out of, playing music as I did, as a 5, 6, 7-year-old playing a recorder, weaseling away on a recorder, weasel, or learning violin, perpetual motion, scraping away, as a child with the same wonderment as I do now. And much the torture of my parents, especially when I took up trumpet.
Oh God, I was going to say, could it get any worse?
Seriously, I went from recorder to violin, trumpet.
Right.
Wow. And I was a kid that never had to be asked to practice. I had to be told to stop.
God.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It was torture. My parents couldn't wait till I moved out.
Brilliant. That's lovely.
And the menagerie of instruments started to grow,
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. So, so you're playing music, and so you've already, because I like to sort of go back and say, right, okay, when did this start? So, were you given a recorder, or what was that? Was that the first thing, or did you?
Yeah, I think probably actually in infant school, we were all given recorders.
Yeah.
It'd be part of the curriculum, and we'd stand around in a circle and, 3 blind mice, and off we'd go. And yeah, that was fascinating to me, just to make sound. And it's something that I've always wanted to do. I was probably at school, I would have been in the geek group because I was sporty, but I wasn't particularly interested in it. If you gave me a musical instrument, I'd be much happier playing a musical instrument with that than out with the lads playing football.
Yeah.
That fascination, straight away. And I suppose for us, as soon as, I suppose as our exposure to music, I was born in 1963, so we're talking Beatles. Hearing the Beatles, from being born, how lucky, into 5 and 6 and 7 years old. And then you're playing on the radio, in the car journey. At home, we'd have an old 78 gramophone record bequeathed by my grandparents.
Yeah.
And music to me then would be, we'd only have a few albums. There'd be like Shirley Bassey, Tijuana Brass, Herb Albert, and then we'd have a couple of Disney albums. So back in the day, pre-video, your parents would buy you like the Jungle Book, but you could buy it as an audio record.
Yeah.
And you could listen to it all the way through. And in your mind, you'd replay the movie. And you'd be listening to all those great Phil Harris songs and Louis Armstrong and not even knowing. And you were sort of 6 or 7 years old. And then, of course, Thursday night would happen. Top of the Pops night. That for us was the holy grail. I don't know about you,
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because one of the things that's really struck me is that the fact that there was a limit, and this keeps coming up.
Yeah.
There was limitations on what was available. Like you're saying, there's only a few albums or whatever. Because I was thinking about a lot of the sort of interviews that you can find now, like on YouTube. Because I stumbled across a clip of Steve Hillage playing, right?
Wonderful Steve Hillage.
Yeah. And there was this sort of interview with him and what have you. And of course, for you to find him,
yes,
you would have had to be watching the TV at a particular time on a particular day.
Yep.
To get that thing, whatever it was, the
Old Grey Whistle Test.
Yeah, Old Grey Whistle Test, or the orchestral version of Tubular Bells that was televised.
Yep. Absolutely.
Does the warm-up act.
Yep.
And you sort of, and now of course you can just find that stuff.
But almost it's the wealth of material you can find is overwhelming.
Exactly, that's the point I'm making.
Yeah.
So the fact that the limit was there, that you really embodied those things that you listened to, because you listened to them over and over again. Yeah. And then you had to go and search for things. You had to go and I think that made a different type of artist.
Certainly one that uses their ears more.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know about you. I mean, for me, music lessons were in school, and the most interesting school music lesson we ever had was probably I was about 11 or 12, playing orchestral music, on an album. They play an album, and along with the album would come these giant cardboard, almost concertina pages. Each child would have one, and it would actually look like a MIDI score on Logic Now. Right, and as the orchestra stepped up, each instrument would have a different color, or each instrument would have a different color, and you'd follow how the waves would change in color. And that for me was incredible. I don't know why color and music just seem to go together. But as part of them learning, you'd learn from your mates or your guitar licks, wouldn't you? And then you'd find, your album that you loved. For me, I decided I was going to start playing bass, because from violin, of course, it had 4 strings, and a bass has 4 strings. It's logical. 0/4 and 5ths, what a lesson that was. You'd get your album. For me, it was something like Led Zepp 2, The Lemon Song, John Paul Jones. Any bass players out there, if you haven't heard that, you need to go and listen to The Lemon Song, because there might be 4 people in Led Zeppelin, but when he played that song, there was just a bass player, and you'd find it, and that's how you'd learn, right?
That's exactly right. And again, you had to spend a lot of time, particularly if you're working it off the record.
Oh yeah, seriously. We were amazing at picking the needle up and going back 2 bars, playing it, picking the needle up, back 2 bars over and over again. You could spend hours and hours. Well, we did.
Yes, exactly.
Right, nailing each little lick. But you'd really have to invest. But because there was no other way, it seemed absolutely normal.
Yes, it did. And I think that's this is such an important aspect of learning, of the depth that you go into the playing of music when you're playing it that way.
Yeah.
Because you're actually internalizing the sound, aren't you? Because if you work something out, you end up shutting your eyes and humming it to yourself. What was it?
Absolutely.
This, and then you go to try and find it, but you've actually internalized the sound.
Yep.
And that's not something I see with music reading. I know that's not necessarily the true for everybody, because I know that some people can just look at a score and sing it.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, it's an external thing and it's a visual thing, whereas working something out off a recording is obviously an auditory thing, but there's a tactile element to it, because you really feel what it is, and you've internalized the sound. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the phrasing.
Yes.
I think that's the key, isn't it? And I think you as a blues player, that's your phrasing is everything. Your words, how you construct your sentences, all of that comes from listening and getting those words and sentences deep. Deep inside. I suppose actually, like a kid, if you're lucky enough to have a dual language parent, you're learning French and English at the same time. You're just internalizing. You're hearing that sound, and then you're figuring out what it is later. I probably didn't hear the word pentatonic until I was about 15. It was just sounds.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, how many guitar players have you met that had no idea of a scale?
Yeah.
But they could,
really play.
They could really play.
Really play.
Yeah. And because, again, a lot of that stuff doesn't sort of make sense. I'll tell you a little story, which I think, I don't think I've ever told this one. That when I lived in Dartford, so I had a load of mates on Temple Hill, so that was pretty much sacred ground, as Keith Richards says, stomping.
Yep.
And there must be something in the water up there. Because I had a friend who was a fantastic keyboard player that played a little bit like Chick Corea. Totally by ear, right? Yep. Amazing, absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And then there was a guy that I met who was a really good bass player, great sort of reggae bass player. And they were all living virtually in the same sort of road, But then there was this guy called Tony Murphy. And don't know, he was one of these guys who just sort of go hitchhiking around Europe, and then he'd come back for a few months. Well, I was quite interested in Tony because he had his most stunningly beautiful sister.
My interest is peaked already. I could see why
yeah. Anyway, so Tony turns up, and I didn't really know Tony very well, but he was in the local, youth club or whatever it was, and sitting there, and a couple of my mates were there, including this really good keyboard player. And Tony sat down, and he started just jamming this idea, and he tore into this Bach thing, right, on an acoustic guitar, and it's like, Ollie.
Whoa.
And then he starts playing some George Benson. So he's playing Breezy. So, because it's got that scale, and all those all that stuff, right?
All exotives going.
Chord, right? And so I went up to him and I went, after he'd finished playing it, and I said, how did you, because you couldn't fight, you couldn't, and I'd had the album and I'd looked at it and it's really difficult.
Yeah.
And because he was playing the chords and stuff, and I said, how did you know that was D major 7? And he went, is it?
What's a D major 7? Yeah.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
He said, no, I just worked it out off the record.
Shh.
And I was just sort of slightly baffled for a moment to realise that somebody had that.
Yes.
And then I met some other people that were even more outrageous.
Yeah. And it was all, and do you think that was good ear? So he had probably maybe perfect pitch. He could have had perfect pitch, but he could really work out intervals well.
Yeah.
Something I had to learn, and
he could just sit down and work the thing out.
Yeah.
But what's interesting was that he didn't really think of himself as a guitar player.
Yeah.
It's just something that he did.
Yes.
So, and I think that's the thing that we just sort of have to realise that the human's capacity to do things is just astonishing.
It is.
And we've all got that capacity to do amazing things, but we've got this idea now that we become something.
Yes.
We do a certificate and then we've become that thing. It's a bit like.
Do you know the hardest trick I reckon is getting out of the way?
Yes.
And I've got in my own way. When I came to see you, I was absolutely in my own way. Blocked on what I was playing and overthinking.
Yeah.
And that getting out of your own way and just creating. That moment when you're noodling at the piano and an idea sort of comes into the room, and you don't look at it directly in the eye. You just kind of let it sort of sit around and do its thing and tease it out. If you're in the studio, I'm not really thinking if I'm doing a string arrangement, okay, this is an F minor 7, we're going to a B flat minor 7, G flat major 7, so I need to go from the 3rd to the 4th. I'm just thinking about sounds. What sort of sounds? And then I'll go on the keyboard maybe and I'll just play. But I won't be thinking about what notes I'm playing. I'll get the sound that I'm after. And then once I've done it, I'll go, oh, so what did I actually do there? Maybe. Sometimes I don't. It's just, you're just painting and color and meshing stuff around, moving, like a collage, sound and color, same, just meshed together. I think if you can get out of the way and do that, perhaps that's what your friend was doing. He was out of the way and just hearing what he was hearing.
And in actual fact, I think that meant that he could do more because he wasn't trying to find the chord that should be there.
Yes, stopping himself.
Yes, in other words, I'm in the key of D major, so therefore it's got to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's the one chord. Where's the 6?
Exactly.
I'm thinking like that. He was just finding the sounds, and I think that child play again. I think comes back to it, isn't it?
And
I don't know.
there's a few things that sort of in retrospect you realise that are fundamental. So maybe, you know, this might be something that resonates with you as we sort of carry on with your story. But sometimes you could look at something that happened and you go, and at the time it might have irritated.
Mm.
And then you realise, actually, that was a really good thing that happened.
Oh, yeah.
So I'll give you an example. I you know, working things out off records and stuff. I worked out a Roy Buchanan track called Tribute to Elmore James.
Oh, I love that. Give me a Telecaster any day.
So it's instrumental for 3-4 minutes.
Yep.
And I worked everything out apart from about 2-3 bars, and I couldn't work out what the guy was doing. And it drove me like
nuts.
Complete. Yeah. So in the end, what I did was I sort of cheated to come up with something that sounded a bit like that, but knowing it wasn't what he was doing.
Yeah.
And at first that just irritated me. And then I realised, well, actually, that was truly the thing that was innovative in that, because I made something up that fulfilled that function, but it wasn't what he was doing. But
you had that style and language because you were playing the rest of the track, right? So you were already thinking about that ice pick tone and probably how it was holding the plectrum to get that really sharp metallic Telecaster sound. You know.
So, but at the time, I didn't think.
No, you were going.
In retrospect, you sort of go, well, that was an important thing. Yeah, because you created something that. Because I mean, how often were you going to be playing tribute to Elmore James?
Not certainly not for money.
No, absolutely.
You know,
but you might be able to nick a few of the lines and stick it.
Absolutely.
So okay, we got to you got to your school thing. Got to obviously you're playing a lot of instruments, and you're in a school where they're doing a lot of musical education.
Yes, right? I suppose we were. I didn't think of it at the time, but yeah, supportive teachers.
So what happens? Do you when you leave school, or because you're involved in playing orchestra?
Yes, choices. So here's the devil's choice, isn't it? You're at the crossroads. You've saved up 25 quid of your pocket money, and now you can either buy from a 3/4 scale violin, and I've got bass player's hands, you'll notice, to a full-size violin for 25 quid. Or you can choose the crossroad approach and meet the devil. There's a shiny red Hofner bass guitar.
Yeah, well, that sounds like a good deal to me.
You'd know which one's going to go. I mean, the violin teacher was sorry. My parents weren't. And so I grabbed the bass guitar and absolutely adored it from the start. Didn't have an amplifier, so I used to sit in my bedroom and practice, and I'd put the headstock of the amplifier against my wardrobe. Just to make some sound out of it, which I suppose the old double bass days, play along and literally till my fingers bled. You couldn't take this thing off me, and it's absolutely natural. And luckily I was hanging out with the geeks, like I said before, at school, and these geeks were also really good at electronics. And so they used to go down to, I think it might have been Tandy, there was some old Radio Shack store, and you could buy little components, and they built me a little amplifier. God knows how I didn't die. And my father built me a speaker cabinet. We found a speaker, and we made a little speaker, a little amp. And that was it. I was out gigging. So I think the first gig was down the youth club, 2 songs in, nice and easy. And I found I could pick up tunes really quickly. A couple of plays and I'd have it down. The bass is a very simple instrument to start. It's a very difficult instrument to master, as you know. But, it came easy. And so then from there, I started playing in bands. And it's funny, actually, so think about sort of 1975, 76, by about that point, punk has just happened. It's really, really exciting. Well, I'm from Bournemouth. Punk didn't happen until 1983. And in Swanage, they're only just getting it. For us, in Bournemouth, in a seaside town, we had the legacy of all the old dinner dances from the 1940s, 30s, 40s, and 50s into the 60s, where you could pick up really good work with little dance bands, and you go and play in restaurants, maybe Thursday, Friday, Saturday night. You play till 1 a.m, play probably about 3 or 4 sets, a good time, and you'd be playing diverse stuff from killer tracks like the St. Bernard's Waltz to Snowbird, right up to disco, disco, through country. And you'd be playing with cats like who were 40 or 50. They've been doing it all their lives, never read a note, knew massive repertoire. And you're the kid, the 16, 17-year-old kid, you know, who will be playing. And so that was really it for me. Not hip at all, you know, but getting loads of gigs. And, you know, the money back then was probably as much as you were getting playing down a pub now.
Yes.
But it was 30, 40 years ago. You know, I'm being kind to myself, maybe 40, maybe like, you know, 35 years ago. And so, yeah, that was it. So playing in dance bands in Bournemouth, and then also putting adverts out and starting to songwrite with other musicians and putting little local bands together. It was quite a good local scene in Bournemouth at the time. We were very lucky, isolated, but lucky. And then learning your craft. You know, you'd always have an older kid that could then write a song. How do I write a song? You know, you play. And then, you know, okay, you know, it's okay, I've got something, you know, it's not very good. Then you work together and, you know, you get it done. So, yeah, I think that fascination with playing instruments, multiple instruments, and also then that songwriting and seeing songwriting as the way out. More than performance, I think. I was more interested in songwriting than performing. So I got, with the money I earned from playing the St. Bernard's Waltz badly, I bought a Fender Rhodes, you know, back in the day, an old, you know, suitcase piano, and then took lessons on that, you know, so thinking that if I could play piano, that would really help with my bass playing, and it did. You know, you don't want to be a monophonic mind in a polyphonic world. You know.
That's a good point. You know, the interesting thing with that is you're saying about songwriting. And you mentioned about playing piano broadens the potential of what you do. You know, but also songwriting does that. If you can write a song, it's easy to learn somebody else's song because you unconsciously can deconstruct it very quickly.
Yes,
you just know how it fits together.
Yep, absolutely.
And it also gives you an appreciation of just about everything else in the song.
Yeah, it gives you a good appreciation of form as well.
Yes.
You know, why you don't do five verses before you hit a chorus, you know, that, and what the bridge function is. And I think actually right back to that first, well, if the first thing you wake up to, you know, is a musical mind is the Beatles, you know, I mean, that's for our generation, the Cole Porter, the Hammersteins, you know, for us, that's almost the perfect example of songwriting for me anyway.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it is because, you know, I do a lot of things about songwriting just to inspire people to create. You know, I'm not saying there's a formulaic. Well, people think there is a formulaic way, but there's always a good example of something that doesn't fit the formula. So
aren't the best songs the one that don't fit the formula?
Exactly.
Where you find your way into an instrument or a sound. The hardest part is not doing familiar fingers on a guitar. You know, detune your guitar, put a new fuzz box on, get a cruddy guitar, do anything just to differentiate, just to agitate, you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the Beatles, you know, even as soon as you talk songwriting, it's like, oh, that's it. They've got it all. So I was doing something last night about riffs, you know, like the return. I called it the return of the riff.
Yay.
The idea was just like, okay, let's have a look at some of these riffs and let's look at the sort of weird things that go on. You know, the Muddy Waters riff that never changes key. Yeah. You know, just sits on that riff. You know, how's that possible? How can you do that for 5 minutes and it still be exciting? You know, to the let's have 10 riffs in a song. You know, Rage Against the Machine, and every riff is an absolute killer. And then you sort of think, right, okay, so now let's have a look at the Beatles.
Yeah.
So you look at that, and so many of their things are just arpeggios. They're very, very cool ideas, but absolutely brilliant. Oh, and you go like, God, you know.
If we were gold mining, I look at it that, you know, we could be looking at the same ground as Paul McCartney, and he will see a gold nugget on the floor. I was sitting on the piano a couple of days ago, and I was playing for no one. I was just playing a C major chord. And suddenly went, you know, C, drop down to the B, the A, the G, the F, you know, the B flat. And the whole song was there that a child could write and play. It's almost, the first things you lay your hand on the keyboard, and it's there. He found it. And I did, read some processes about, what he does. And they say, if you're ever in a room and he's starting to write a song, you would think there was a 3-year-old on the piano. It's such a simple start, but he can imagine and build and go and get out of the way and do the whole thing. Somebody's knocking on the door, somebody's ringing the bell. You've got to imagine that happened, and he's sitting trying to work something out, and he goes and he just writes it.
Yeah. So there's a lot of that sort of stuff where he has an ordinary event,
yes,
right, or an ordinary conversation,
yep,
or an ordinary moment in time. Yes. Obviously, his section of A Day in the Life is a really good example. Just getting up,
absolutely,
get out of bed. Yeah, and that's
I've got my cup of tea here.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And as you say, it's the sort of narrative of something where you're just telling a story.
Yep.
And it's not grandiose by design, but there's something sitting inside the story that is completely accessible. It's a bit like a myth, isn't it?
Yeah.
The actual narrative itself doesn't make sense, but there's a lot of truths bubbling around inside it. And I think that's the thing that really hooks humans into stories. It's the fact that they can associate to those things that are bubbling around inside a story. And good lyrics do that, I think.
Yeah. I struggle with lyrics. I always have done. I used to find them a lot easier when I was younger and I was hungry and I was, in London, just starting out, all the rest of it. And I don't write lyrics anymore. So, my songwriting partner of maybe 30, 35 years, Steve, fantastic lyricist. He gets as much joy as writing a lyric, a really well-crafted lyric, as I will a melody. And I often wonder why. And I think for me, I don't write lyrics anymore because I'm really content and happy in life. And I don't want to go, wow. I woke up this morning, everything was really good. And I was so happy. It's like, who wants to hear that? And as a 60-year-old, I'm going to be 60 this year. I don't know if you don't write songs, outside of your own perspective, and you're not writing songs about current affairs or something, I really struggle. So I'm really happy actually not writing lyrics anymore, but concentrating on music and composition and sounds. It's been a great relief to me to go, I'm a really bad lyricist.
That's interesting. Let's just sort of double back to the sort of chronology of what you're doing.
Yeah.
Come back to this thing about the lyrics. So you've got this. You got your band. You got you're doing your dinner dances and playing. Old 60s and 50s classics as well as disco numbers and.
Yep. And then obviously you've got your original band, which you're really excited about, the thing that's hit and you're happening. So I met a guy called, So I met a guy called Martin Warman, and he put an advert in the Echo. He's about 2 years older than me. He was living on a bedsit, just had his first baby, and a wonderful musician, great voice. We did a gig with him last year, and it was just back to the old days. Love the guy, very talented songwriter too. So I was definitely a junior songwriter in this partnership, but actually working with a really good songwriter who's older than you to start with is wonderful. I've always been the youngest kid in the band. Unfortunately, now I'm getting to be the oldest, but being the youngest kid in the band is great. If you can hold your weight and then learn, shut up and learn, you'll learn some great things. And so we started this little band called In at the Deep End, which is an awful name. Sounds like sort of like a BBC Two drama or something. I don't know. But anyway, little three-piece got well. We did the normal thing as we all do, recorded a demo. And then I went down to the local libraries and there was a book called The White Book. It was the music industry production book. You couldn't go online and say, right, who are record companies? Where would you go? There's no internet. There's no mobile phone. There's a phone box at the end of the road. Smells of weed. You might have 10p to phone a girl or something. So I went down to the local library and I copied out 30 addresses of record companies that we liked, Virgin, Tubular Bells, anybody that we thought was hip and happening, who we got from NME. And then I sent off 30 cassette tapes, handwritten, because there was no typewriter, at home. And we got 2 letters back. We're quite interested in this. Do you want to come up and, do an audition? You have to. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. And for me, it's completely logical. All my mates didn't do that. But for me, it was absolutely, I've got this thing. Well, how do I get a record deal? I need to speak to a record company. Well, right, I'll go and, it took a couple of nights to do, with my spidery little handwriting. A couple of letters came back. So then we worked out that we get, you go on these 5 bands a night bill that some of the clubs had. And there were really good clubs up in London. So we managed to get like 5th on the bill. And the first band on that actor just had a single out and was sort of like a somebody. And we made our biggest mistake ever. We decided, well, we don't want to be first on the bill because nobody's going to see us. So we're going to wait a little bit. And then we'll go on a bit later when all the record company executives are in there. What actually happened was we were late. And so the promoter, quite rightly, just removed our gear from the stage and said, right, you can go on at 1 o'clock in the morning then. Big lesson, that one. Yeah. First lesson of music, punctuality.
Yes.
Be on time, have all your stuff ready. Doesn't matter when you play. If somebody gives you a time, be there 10 minutes before, do it. Don't be late. Don't think you're a star just because somebody sent you a letter. Anyway, so that was a good one. So we phoned the record company. Oh, we turned up, but we were told you weren't playing that night. Okay. So when we did the second time, obviously we learned our lesson. And we got some good interest. We didn't get picked up, but it showed me that actually you could record something, and if you were tenacious, you could get it in the hands of a record company executive, which is what we wanted, to get our album and get fame and fortune. And so we carried on for a bit, and then I managed to pick up a gig playing American airbases. So there was a circuit. You could go out for 6 months. Yeah, I don't know if you ever heard all scene mates do it. A
friend of mine did it. Yeah.
So I joined a band called Chateau for no particular reason. And again, they were sort of playing Eric Clapton stuff. Wonderful guitarist, Steve Ellis. And so I was on the road 6 months with them. When you start out in a van we bought from Leamington Council for £100, no MOT, transit van. We boarded the back up to put the kit in it, 4 seats. And that was it. We were off, and we went down to Spain. They flew us to the Azores, came back, went round to Italy, Crete, Turkey, managed to get around the Syrian border, all in 6 months. Self-contained little unit. You'd be playing on the American air bases, and you'd be staying there as well. And you'd have to play 4 sets a night, an hour each, and 5 on a Friday and Saturday.
Wow.
That gets your chops pretty good.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And also, I was fortunate enough, I was playing bass in a band, sort of backing vocals, but the guitar player, Steve, was phenomenal. So not only did I get to do that, but I got to bunk with a phenomenal guitarist for 6 months. And I kind of absorbed some of his style. I got confused later on, obviously, which we might talk about. But at the time, joy. So I came back, and then it was like, I'm in Bournemouth. I'm on the dole. What do I do? So it was like, okay, there's only one thing I can do. I've got to move to London. And that's what I did. I got in the car, said to mum and dad, right, I'm going to London. I had a friend up there, slept on his floor like you always do. You always have a friend in London. You sleep on their floor for a couple of weeks. You find yourself a squat or a little bed sit, and then you're there, and then off you go. And the actual reality of that is you starve.
Yes.
You starve for at least 2 years.
Yeah.
Well, doing nothing, meeting nobody, and eventually, you get your face around. So that was it, from Bournemouth to London. And so many of my friends made that migration if we were out of town, and everybody wanted to get away from the small town living. And as we got older and more mature, we realized that really all we wanted was small town living.
Exactly. So you end up moving back out.
We couldn't afford to go back.
Oh yeah.
Priced out.
Yeah.
So that was it. So that gets me to London, and I think lots of people did the same thing. Did they do the same thing?
I think they did.
I was the only one in my group that did the same thing.
No, there's a few. A few, because he was, first of all, talking about the American air bases.
Oh yeah.
I interviewed somebody who did that, a guitarist, and you sort of think, well, those things were there.
Yeah.
They were
Really?
the circuits that, you know, you had the working men's clubs things, but then you had this thing, and that's a completely different thing. And obviously the Americans had more money.
Oh, yeah, they did. I mean, there was maybe, I don't know how many bands were on the road at the same time. I mean, there were, maybe 20 air bases. There was always an English band on one of the bases, and it would take us 6 months to do the circuit. So, you know, we never actually got to meet the other bands. We'd hear about them, you know, you'd turn up and, you know, they might leave your messages scrawled in the sort of the billet wherever you were bunking or whatever. But, you know, it was an incredible thing. And, you know, I was 19, I think 20. Yeah, or maybe I was 19 or 20. And so I didn't realize the significance of working on a nuclear air base, you know, didn't really strike me very much. It was more interested in what was great down the PX, and you could come out at 1 a.m. and get breakfast, you know, with all the air crew, and then go to the cinema. You know, first time I saw Cheech and Chong, right, was like 2 a.m, you know, as a kid, you know, with the Airmen, or, you know, Conan the Barbarian or whatever they had. But one thing I did learn is that when we had touring American bands turn up, they used to fly a few over, the standard of the musicianship was far higher than us. And we really did look like amateurs, you know, enthusiastic amateurs, you know, with a nice style, but technically they were so superior to us. And I never quite think, I'm assuming because they had such a big pool of musicians to choose from. But in general, you know, if you, that was an interesting thing to me about, maybe I should take this a bit more seriously and really try and understand what I'm doing.
Yeah, so because I was trying to think who it was, I think it was Max Milligan that was doing that. So Max is a fabulous guitar player.
Yeah.
I think he used to play for Billy J. Kramer.
Whoa, yeah, great.
You know, so, really
serious jobs.
I'm not sure whether that was who he was with them when they were touring there, because you know, that would have been, it's possible that could have been, but I don't know. Anyway, that's just another.
63. So I mean, we're in the 80s now, I guess. Yeah, so we're around about 84, 85. You know, the new romantic scene is just about to happen at home, maybe. You know, and yeah, we're on the road doing the bases. It was an amazing experience. I mean, I can replay the whole 6 months in my mind like a long video. You know, the good and the bad, and see some of the things that we saw on the road, which, you know, it's a shame really, because, you know, they're locked inside you, aren't they? You can't really share them.
No, exactly.
They inform you, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So with this thing of the you know, surviving in London.
Oh yeah. Barely
surviving in London. What did that sort of lead to then? Did you?
Well, for me, so I'd moved into, so obviously I'd stopped. I'm from Bournemouth, right? So I'd stopped where the M3 met London. So I was in Twickenham, Surbiton, that area, quite posh to do, but you could find some nice squats back in the day back then, you know.
Yes.
Say that, but you know, so it was a nice area, and to get money, then I picked up a little duo, playing in pubs, and we were playing in Twickenham quite a lot. And it just so happened that a gentleman who ran a program for TSB Bank, called Rock School, used to come and drink in the pub. Name was Roger, lovely fella, real larger-than-life character. And Rock School was an offshoot of a BBC program.
Yes,
I remember it. There was a three-piece band.
That's Deirdre Hart, right?
Yep, absolutely. Deirdre on guitar.
Henry Thomas.
Oh, now you're talking. Yep.
Yeah.
And then
I can't remember the drummer.
The bass player? Okay.
No, the bass player was Henry Thomas, right?
Yeah. They were great. And actually seeing a girl play guitar, or a lady play guitar, was revolutionary for us at the time, wasn't it? You know, it's like, wow, girls can play guitar too. Oh, they're good.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah.
Good.
So it was an offshoot of that. And the two things they used to do were, so yeah, I suppose, so the program itself, the band would come on and they'd play in a variety of styles, and they'd come and instruct you on how to play reggae, where the guitar would fall for reggae, and what would be the bass and the drums would be doing, you know, something that we didn't really sort of understand it. And it was pre kind of VHS videos where we had all the instructional videos out. So it was a pretty good show to our arsenal of, you know, elements that we had to learn from, you know, which was slim pickings. And so they did two things. They did a Battle of the Band contest around the country for school bands, which was really pretty big, great standard. And so I was a guitar tech on there, because I always loved my technology. And then the other thing they did was they went round to schools on a tour and taught early music technology to music teachers. And I had a fascination with MIDI synthesizers and, all of that stuff. And also, I was okay, as a guitar tech. So I did that, which is great, getting out on the road. And again, being part of the backstage thing and actually seeing all these young school bands who would have trounced anybody in Bournemouth, were really good. And, we'd have guest judges. Who turned up? Robert Plant was a guest.
Oh, wow.
It's totally going, whoa, Robert's critiquing, this, 16-year-old guy. Yeah, pretty good. But yeah, I had my first single out when I was 15, and yeah, you did. And yeah, that was cool. So did that, and that was great. And from there, it was sponsored not only by TSB, particularly the education side, by Yamaha and Roland. And I just certainly happened to be at a Chinese restaurant on one of these road shows, and a gentleman called Chris Simpson turned up from Roland, who was sort of helping with the marketing. Turned out he was from Bournemouth and keyboard player. We'd never met. And we got into a bit of a food fight situation, as you do when the drinks are flowing. And I managed to hit him with a sweet and sour prawn right in the middle of the forehead, which at the time I thought was a bad thing. But he kind of laughed and, it carried on. And we really hit it off. And about 2 weeks later, he managed to track me down because, of course, I didn't have a phone. And a friend said, phone Chris, he's trying to get hold of you. And Chris said, hey, Guy, I've got this job as a freelance guitar demonstrator coming up, in Roland. How do you fancy it? I went, Chris, yeah, it sounds fantastic. It sounds amazing. But, I'm a bass player. And he went, he was a pianist, wonderful pianist. And he went, it's only 2 more strings.
Yeah.
And I was stupid enough to say, yes. Okay, it's only 2 more strings. I can do this. And then that was my journey into Roland as a freelance demonstrator. So I started working on the exhibition stands, demonstrating products. So my lack of guitar skill didn't really matter. I was demonstrating the product so much. But boy, did I learn pretty quickly, And that was it for me. That was the start of, sort of my industry life.
Right. So were you demonstrating what would it have been, the GR?
Yeah, the GR50 was one. I had a guitar synth. The first guitar synth.
So the one with the bar across which was the one that
had a little stick-up pickup. So yeah, the ones before that, the GR 300s, you see Andy Summers playing it, like a silver guitar. And it was a dedicated Roland guitar. In fact, there were a couple of them that were quite heavy. This was the first one that had a little hex pickup. So individual 6 poles, they fit around the back behind your bridge, and you'd have a little controller. So the guitar would then come out and play. And basically this little hex pickup would then generate MIDI information, and you could play basic pianos and strings and all the rest of it. And obviously the things like strings were perfect, and you'd learn. Again, it was great discipline, because you'd learn, if you were mimicking a piano on a guitar, how to play a really open voicings. But if you tried that same open voicing on a B3, a Hammond sound, it would sound awful. So you'd learn how to construct really small triads to make that Hammond sound, where the chordal sound is really tight. So, or if you're playing a saxophone, sound on a guitar, how to make it really sound like a saxophone. You'd have to really think saxophone. It was a great discipline. And it was quite difficult to do. We made it look a little easier than it was, unless, you have to spend a bit of time with it to make it work. Nowadays, it's almost seamless. And you can, with the Cosm technology and the rest of it, you can plug straight in. It sounds amazing. But back in the day, you'd have to be quite careful how you played. And so, yeah, it was interesting, exciting. And the best thing is I got the brand new kit before anybody else for free.
Yeah, brilliant.
So you literally, even though I didn't have many guitar chops at the time, on some of this stuff, on the multi-effects processors, when they first literally came out, you could drop the guitar and it would sound good.
Yeah.
Oh, it sounds like The Cure. Yeah, well, it would, wouldn't it? 20 echoes, 14 flanges, and 2 chorus effects. It's going to sound pretty well. So yeah, that was my way into the industry.
Right, that's brilliant.
I'm very lucky. So but you did a wonderful podcast, Imposter Syndrome. Now, if you want imposter syndrome, boy, did I have it. You know, I'm following on stage. You know, I'm going on the stage, maybe playing in front of 200 guitarists. I play like a lemon. I know I do, and I'm just followed. You know, Jeff Whitehorn for Marshall.
Yes.
And behind me, coming up behind me, is Phil Hilborn.
Yes. Yeah.
Watching me is my good friend Jay Stapley. You know, it's like fun. These are my heroes. You know, so that was quite an interesting kind of head spin that shook me up for a little while. You know, quite a while, I think, carrying that baggage around. But something I was very lucky for what I did, and I managed to work my way around it, I think, by, you know, demonstrating the product and not myself.
Yeah, because that's the interesting thing, isn't it? Because that's what you're there to do.
Yeah.
Is demonstrate and in a way, it's better to say, well, look, this stuff, you know, it's not like you're hearing that guy doing it and then you're looking at it and going, right, oh my God, you know, I'm never going to be able to do that. It's a case of saying, well, you can do all of what I'm doing easily.
Yes.
You know, so and that works really well, actually.
I would have the spiel at the end. They'd say, Guy goes into sincere mode at the end of his demo. And the sincere mode goes, I know you guys could all play better than me, but, you know, if this enhances my playing, if I can make it sound like this with the talent that I've got, you guys will make it sound 10 times better. Sold. You know, units will go flying out the door. Happy days. You know, we're all happy.
Exactly.
But I have to say that always that imposter syndrome. I never had that before, and it's only with guitar. You know, playing in that realm. But I was very lucky, and I'm glad I did it. And I'm glad I stuck it out because it got me friendships for life. And also, you know, I knew I was lucky. Literally, you know, if I'd have said to you know, there's a guitar demonstrator job going with Marshall, Matt, I mean, every guitarist in the country would have bitten their hand off to do it. And I was fortunate enough, you know, Forrest Gump styley, just to be in the right place with a sweet and sour prawn in my hand.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not talent sometimes.
That's it, isn't it? So
not talent. It just, you know. But I suppose, you know, if I hadn't moved to London, if I hadn't done the starving, all those little chance butterfly wings, things would happen.
Well, this is another thing about this podcast is that you see that and those things might only happen. Well, you notice them once or twice in life.
Yes.
But of course, when you interview lots of people, then you realise that they've all got these in.
Yes.
It's actually very, very common.
It's actually
part of it's actually part of what happens in life.
Yep.
But again, because we're so close to everything, we don't see the patterns. I've just finished a book. It's not out yet. We're just doing the last bits of the artwork for the cover and all that sort of stuff. And I've spent, you know, probably 10 years working on this damn thing. And it's all about creativity. And Rick Rubin has just brought out a book called The Creative Act. And I've listened to the book on Audible, and it's totally,
so I'm getting a pencil, I'm writing this down.
Yeah, so The Creative Act, and it's absolutely in the same ballpark as my book. Now, I would have gone in the past. I would have gone like, oh my God, But now I look at it and go, that's good.
Yes,
because it's actually there's the vibe. It's out there, and I'm obviously on the same vibe as this thing. And you think, well, that's weird, isn't it? Because obviously, when you write a book, it takes such a long time. And he said it took him 8 years, 6-8 years to write this. And I'm thinking, well, yeah, that's how this stuff works. So what I've noticed is that when you step back far enough, you know, a crowd of people on, you know, London Bridge Station, that just seems to be a complete and utter mess, right? But if you speeded that up and panned back, it looks like it's a shoal of fish all knowing where they're going.
Yep.
And I also saw something about prime numbers that, again, if you stand back far enough from this enormous, you know, set of prime numbers, there is a pattern. whereas we thought there wasn't a pattern. And I think that's what happens, that there are patterns that standing back far enough by interviewing, I don't know, 150 people, you realise...
I'll get the coffee on.
Yeah, and growing.
I'm with you all the way. I'm absolutely with you.
Realise that these things are there.
Yep.
You have to engage with that, and the engagement with it is taking risks and saying yes. And, you know, like, there's only 2 extra strings, you know.
Yeah.
So I think, okay, I'll do it then.
I'll do it. Crazy.
That is exactly how these things take shape.
Yep. I would 100% agree, and I would also, you know, concur with you that in like, you seem to almost a decision comes up, you make it. It's a yes or no. It's a matrix, blue or green pill. You make your choice, and then everything seems to like maybe start plateau. You know, for another 5-10 years, another choice will come up, and the choices only seem important when you get to sort of, you know, 60 and look back. If I hadn't have done that. That yes or no, left or right, it's never very grey. It always is a definite path that splits.
Yes.
There's no fudging in it. You chose that path, and it's completely different to that path, which will send you off. And you know, if you're lucky and your 50-50s come up enough, you know, you end up, you know, in a place you want to be. And if not, maybe you're still in the place you want to be, but you have no idea of the alternate universe you could have had. You know,
yes,
the other path. So but I'm with you. Random decisions that just turn up, and then you take them or you don't take them, and the path they lead you on. Yeah.
So what happens after this?
Well, in conjunction, I'm doing the Roland thing. I'm very lucky. So I meet a band. You know, I'm in a few London bands, all up and coming. We're all trying to, you know, make records and things. And I get into a band called Playing for Time, and they're based down in Guildford. I'm the only person in London, but they rehearse in London, and it just so happens that I'm playing in a band, and the keyboard player who's depping, I'm the keyboard player as well. So live, he covers for me. He's a singer in a band. They were looking for another songwriter. Count me in. So the band's full. It's a 6-piece band already with a wonderful guitarist called Steve, who's my lifelong friend. And so I join as a songwriter. And so Steve and I become the sort of principal songwriters. We're not writing together at this point. We're writing individually and bringing songs into the band. And they kind of, it's that standard kind of Johnny Hates Jazz, wet, wet, wet kind of sound. You know, it was definitely pop. You know, we were looking for a deal. But what we were doing is we'd be writing all week. And then on Sunday when we rehearsed, bringing songs in for the band. And every time Steve would come in with a better song, I would go, oh, no way. I would, you know, all week I'd be writing this song, come in, and he'd go, that's a good song. And next week, you know, he'd top it. You know, he would die, you know, rather than come in with a song that wasn't as good. And so that sort of healthy, friendly competition, we'd help each other as well. But generally, we'd be working separately and then coming in with ideas. Was fantastic. You know, we did that for a couple of years. Went for the record deal. Just got a single deal, and we got a good following. You know, we were selling out Ronnie Scott's and places like that. You know, but again, we'd be hiring Ronnie Scott's and then selling tickets, so we'd be promoting as well, which really helped with the business. And then, you know, I mean, it got to the stage where we wanted an album deal. We weren't given it. We got a single deal instead. So, you know, we sucked it up. And in the end, we decided, okay, you know, let's split before we get into a rubbish deal, which is tied for life. You know, you could sign a deal and, you know, be 5 albums in, and you'd be beholden to the record company for the rest of your life. And if you failed, which you were likely to do because they'd hired 10 bands maybe in the same style as the one band they wanted to get the competition out of the way, you'd be tied up for years. And so we decided to call it a day on the band, which was the best thing we ever did because we remained friends. And so Steve and I are still writing. He's coming down, you know, in a couple of weeks' time. I've got 2 songs in the studio. We're still writing together. And so what we got from playing and being in London and being in bands was just a musical partnership, you know, which still runs, which, you know, I'm really proud about.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? It's good.
Yeah. And so, so again, my Roland thing was running along, you know, band's doing great. Okay, we decided to quit that. And then it was getting to about 30 years old. And Chris, who originally hired me with Roland, we're still working together, really good friends. Roland decided to move down to Swansea. They were based in Brentford originally. And so when they moved down to Swansea, he said, I don't want to go to Swansea. So he went to the managing director, Brian Nunn. He's a lovely man, and said, Brian, how about, we set up a company and we take all the sort of marketing aspect, all the exhibition stuff, which is what we used to do, build the exhibition stands and run them. And we take it as a separate company. And Brian, God bless him, said, yeah, go for it. Set up a company, and then, we'll employ you. You'll be Roland will be your first client. And so Chris said to me, we're in a I think teppanyaki restaurant this time, not Chinese, in Birmingham.
Right.
And he said, do you want to set up a business with me? And I went, yeah, well, what do you do? He's got to do the same now. We'll set up a little company in Chiswick and do it. And I went, well, obviously he's the one with all the brains. He's got the university education. He's the one with the job, the contacts. And I went, oh, what do you want? 60-40 or something? He said, no, we're going 50-50. And the greatest gift ever. So we set up this company called Promus, which then looked after all the building of the Roland music stands. Now you can imagine, back in the day, we were building double-decker stands. There was money floating around everywhere, and all the stand construction and everything would come through the company.
Right.
And then, we'd pay off all the contractors. And so it didn't take long before, we were doing that. And then we had Yamaha, and then we were building Technics, and we were out all over the place building all these stands. We weren't doing them physically. We were getting the contractors to build it, but we were managing it. And then before you know it, we're chatting. We know all the organizers, and the organizers go, yeah, there's this thing called health and safety coming up. And we've got, we don't know much about it. So, okay, health and safety, eh? So we started doing health and safety at exhibitions. What the old health and safety used to be the fire officers at Earls Court. They're all ex-firemen, and they used to plod around, do the rounds. And basically, when people were going crazy, drilling themselves through feet, the feet, or were up 40 foot high, hanging off a rope, they would go, oi, yo, like the warden from Dad's Army,
Yeah.
But then there was initial qualification. So we took the qualifications and started doing health and safety. Before you know it, then we're running like Earls Court and Ideal Home Show. We've got the keys. And if you want to talk about, people on bridges, looking down at Earls Court from the roof, seeing 25,000 people milling, plodding, and actually seeing that that kind of the mental fog people go into when they're in a massive group of people just following the person behind.
Yes.
That's what you're looking.
It's
really
interesting, isn't it?
when you observe. Yeah. I mean, I remember clearly I'd be on like a fire exit on a Saturday at Earls Court, and I'd be at the top of the stairs of the fire exit. And what would happen is people would get on the the escalator. They go up the escalator and they take a millisecond to orientate themselves at the top of the stairs. And as they took that second, then they move on. But those seconds would build up, and eventually people would be piling behind them trying to get off the escalators, and we'd be pulling them off and eventually trying to close it to see that sort of amount of people. So I've never been a fan of large spaces and large people since.
No.
But yeah, it was great to do. And that's, then we went into the industry and still playing music on the side. But yeah, that was like an all-consuming 20 years down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
A hell of a ride.
Yeah. So you're not doing that now, or are you?
No. So luckily for me, so again, another decision. So after we'd done that for about 5 years, we got pretty successful. But I always remember Brian saying, look, Chris was so much brighter than me. We lost Chris last year, and it was tragic. But he was so much brighter than me, and intellectually, and charisma. I'm a really good worker and organizer, but he was really smart cookie. And so if we were doing a presentation, it would be Chris that would instantly stand up and do it. And I remember my old boss said to me, he turned to me one day and he went, Guy, a dog can't have two dicks.
Yeah.
Greatest piece of advice anyone ever gave me. And what he was telling me was that as if I stayed in the shadow the whole time, I'd never do anything. And so I said to Chris, look, I want to set up on my own, and I want to do this thing called conference production, which is basically the same as setting up stages. But instead of something interesting happening, something uninteresting generally happens. And for me, it was financial markets. And so that's what I did. And that was another yes or no, left or right, red or blue pill. And quite a scary thing to do, but worked out okay. It turned out that the thing I really wanted to do and be good at and be amazing at was music. But the thing actually I was really, really good at was setting up stages.
Amazing. That's really interesting because, again, when I sort of teach kids, it's always like when they get to that point, they're getting really good. It's like, okay, now what you're going to do with this thing, and about diversifying, so that you're not. And of course, sometimes that takes them in a completely different direction.
Absolutely.
Takes them into a different area. So this is a good example of what you're saying about what you.
Yeah, I had no idea. I never thought, I thought if we were going to do staging and things like that, we'd be doing Glastonbury. I'd be doing music events. Never once did I think I'd be working in the corporate market and it would be financial institutions that we'd be working for, which for me actually sat a little uncomfortably, working for the fat cats, if you like. But actually, if you work for the fat cats, there's a chance you might get a lick of cream. And
yeah, totally. Yeah. No, there's a lot more.
I could be sitting in a field, splicing multi-course together, or I could be in a 5-star hotel in Hong Kong, admittedly always walking in through the kitchen entrance, but it was, I wouldn't say I enjoyed it, but I was good at it, so, and actually not doing it. So when I start and you ask me, what do? I said, I'm very lucky I wake up every day and play music. Yeah. I wake up every day and play music.
What you doing?
Because I did 20 years doing something I didn't want to do, or didn't enjoy doing.
But of course, you're doing a lot of playing in interesting places, aren't you?
Yes. Oh man, I'm loving it. So one of the imposter syndromes things, I always thought I never had an ology, and so and Steve, he went to Guildford when they were doing music courses, and he went through there maybe 25 years ago. It was good when he went in, and it was amazing when he came out. And I was thinking, oh, well, music, I need to get an ology to be good. I need a certificate on the wall to say I'm good. So I did the Berklee online courses.
Oh, wow.
You couldn't do Berklee, you couldn't go. Yeah, I did have a couple of mates that went and never saw them again. They must have had a great time or flunked out or something. But I did, 3 years. I did a master guitar certificate. And what that gives you basically is you do 3-month courses online, really well laid out. They're brilliant. Not as good as doing a face-to-face guitar course at all, but you've got chunks of, sort of 101 blues or 101 jazz, or I did a Steve Vai course, believe it or not.
Well,
not that I could play like Steve Vai at all, but I just wanted to just see what it was around. And it was very, very good for melody. But there was one bit where you get to speak to, Steve Vai, online. And so, yeah, it was a really good course. So they're all asking in technical questions. But one thing he did posit, which I'll just throw in randomly, is that he said, when I'm on stage, he said, never, ever give the audience 100% of what you can do. I was like, what? I'm literally, I have a soul man. When I go on stage, I'm going to give you blood, sweat and tears. I'm going to give you 110% of what I am. I owe it to the audience. And Steve was like, no, you muppet. He didn't say that, he's American. He said, you only give them 90%. He said, if you go past 90%, you'll fall over. He said, when you see me play, and I'm doing these stuff on stage, know that I've got 10% in the tank. And that's why he never messes up.
Right.
I don't know if that's like a good metaphor life or why that bit of information stuck with me, but it seemed to go against the grain at the time. But actually, now I think about it, when I play on stage and I've got it all down and everything's under my fingers and I'm out of the way, I'm not giving 60%. It's easy, isn't it?
Yeah.
But only when you try and push and do stuff, I suppose never do something on stage you can't play in the rehearsal room.
Exactly.
There's another way of saying
it.
It's probably the better way of saying it, more eloquent or simpler.
Yeah.
But that surprised me for a while. It really made me think. Steve Vai doesn't give 100% on stage. Well, he does. He gives you the 100% that he wants you to see.
Exactly. That's brilliant.
Yeah, but he's got 10% in the tank. He never messes. That's why he never misses a note.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
that's all.
So anyway, I did the Berklee thing, and brilliant. At the end of 3 years, I got a certificate. And you know what? I was worse off than when I started.
Yeah.
Because I had so much information in my brain that I actually virtually couldn't play at all, which is when I met you. God bless you. Thank you.
Yeah.
One lesson in, it was like having your chi blocked by a sensei master and unblocking your chi. The simple words of, you fool, stop trying to go, oh, I'm going now to the major third so I can now lift up and now play the fourth or the one chord. Stop it. Sing what you want to play.
Yeah.
Find your voice. Man, it worked a treat. It was absolutely brilliant. Best hour of lessons I've ever had. Thank you so much, sir.
Oh, that's lovely.
And I do that now, and it freed me up no end. I don't worry about that I can't do a super fast run, but I've learned to sing my own song.
Yeah.
For good or bad. And it's probably the same song that I've always been singing. It's the song you're kind of born with. You know, it's your voice, isn't it?
It is. It is about finding your voice, isn't it?
Yeah. Find your voice and enjoy it. And now, you know, I wake up, I cannot wait to run to a guitar or a piano or a bass or switch the computer on and splash around with some sound. It's great. Feel very blessed, very lucky.
That's great. And you've just come back from where? Antigua?
Yeah. So we resided at sort of Florida or Antigua, and Antigua, actually, that was a real revelation. So I get up every morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, and I cannot wait. So I've got a little travel guitar. It looks like a Stratocaster, but the body's been cut off it. You know, it's a half a guitar, but the neck's the right scale length. And I scurry down to the dock, you know, a little bit where I sit, and I can, you know, sitting out over the water, and I just play. You know, I've got a little looper pedal, or I might work on repertoire, or I might just play and see if anything comes up, you know, for the bank of ideas, seed ideas. And it's joy. But yeah, I picked up a little band when I was out there. Went to a restaurant. There was a girl singer, Hannah Jones, and Jonathan From, amazing piano player. They sound pretty cool. They were doing like a happy hour sort of sound. And as they came past, you know, my mate said, who knew John, said, "Hey, there's a guitar player there." And so he said, "Oh, come around tomorrow. We'll have a jam." So we did, and I really enjoyed it. And so 2 days later, I'd learned 2 hours worth of material, you know, as you do. I hadn't slept. I'd been listening to material on the headphones overnight as well to maximize your hours. And out gigging, I'm really enjoying it. So we're going back out in the summer and then be back out at Christmas. It's a joy. And the bit that surprised me is that I gigged and enjoyed it completely using a half a guitar. I had one reverb pedal, which is my favorite reverb pedal, trebles, and I was plugged straight into the PA. Nothing else. And actually on that guitar, it's only the neck pickup that works well.
It's all about limits.
Seriously, I had a ball. You know, I'm sort of, you know, I'm palm muting, I'm, you know, violining, swelling, doing lots of swelling, making it sound like a synth, you know, but nothing else. And, you know, at home, you know, if you look at the rack of guitars I have, you know, and the Kemper and the amp that I can only possibly use and nothing else will do, and, you know, the choice boutique effects pedals, which, you know, have to be in that color and boxed. One lead, a reverb pedal plugged into the PA. I went to use the whammy bar because the pianist has got perfect pitch. He wouldn't let me use it. He said, "You have to use that." I'm killing you, aren't I? He went, "Yes, you are. Take it off."
Brilliant stuff. So is that right? Because that loop, again, as you said, looper pedal, but that sort of loops back to what we were saying at the beginning about the limits of what you had access to at the beginning.
Yeah.
So
you know, I tend to go down the rabbit hole. I don't know like you, and I'm already thinking about what guitar I need to take out, you know, next time to play professionally. And the voice in my head said, "You idiot, you don't need anything. Don't do anything. Just do the same thing and sing your song." You know, so it really has got me over sort of, I'm not saying I'm not going to buy any more guitars. I'm not saying I was on eBay before, you know, heaven forbid. However, I really do realize that no, it's not the guitar, it's all in your hand and your head.
Yes, totally.
And your heart.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, mate, that was awesome stuff.
I'm sorry I gave you 60 years in 60 minutes.
No, that's really cool because, you know, this is the type of thing about, if you're being creative, about broadening, being open to lots of possibilities.
Oh, yeah.
And it's, you know, you could take that idea not only to do with what you actually do physically, but how you write material. It's exactly the same thing, isn't it?
Yep.
Be completely open to ideas of other people's and other musical styles. It doesn't matter how you think about it. Being open to different instrumentation. You don't have to, it's that sort of attitude of being completely open to everything.
Yes.
Because we don't, in society, that's like we said again, what we said at the beginning. We get that thing of you're qualified to do a particular thing, and you're not allowed. That's because you're not an expert, and that's just such nonsense.
No, I agree. And I would also posit that maybe that comes with age. Because certainly it wasn't like that when I was younger. I was very sort of blinkered, and, collaborating was difficult. I mean, Steve and I didn't collaborate for years. We would run in parallel, but now we do all the time. And we're really open to each other's ideas. Maybe just.
I do think it is amazing. You do see.
Yeah. Maybe we checked our ego. We checked our egos.
Yes.
Doesn't matter. Like,
or lost the ego along the way somewhere.
Yeah. 60,000 new songs are uploaded to the internet every single day. Why should we be precious about our, let's call it art or whatever we do? Does it satisfy us? Do we get pleasure from it? Is that enough? Well, we don't have to make money for it, luckily. So the answer is yes.
Yeah, totally. Brilliant. All right then, mate. That's so good. Good to see you again.
Hey, Andrew. Good to see you looking so well.
And you.
Hey.
I'll speak to you soon, right?
Okay.
Invite me out to Antigua.
Will do. Offers always, invitation is always open.
Good one. Cheers.
Take care, bud. Bye.